Magnificent Seven is an excellent film from 1960. It's one of my favorite films. I've actually seen it quite a few times, and it's got a number of big-name, popular celebrities from the 1950s and 1960s in it, and I'll get to that in just a minute. The Magnificent Seven itself is a remake of an Akira Kurosawa classic, The Seven Samurai, which in and of itself is an amazing film. So both of these are two remarkable films. I'm not going to compare them as far as which one is better. I think each have merits of their own, and I'll probably do a separate review for Seven Samurai in the future, but for today I wanted to talk about the Magnificent Seven in particular. So the film basically stars a number of people. The first one we're introduced to is this Eli Wallach character. He's sort of a Mexican bandit who leads a group of marauders, and they've been pestering a poor Mexican village where they basically show up and they demand food and supplies, and if they mouth off, they get shot and killed. So this village is kind of living in this condition where they're always getting raided by Eli Wallach and his friends, and what they end up doing is the villagers consult the old man of the village and they ask him for his advice, and the old man says, "Enough, you need to fight." And in this regard, I think it's very similar in the plot to Seven Samurai. The villagers go to town and they're basically trying to find some gunslingers that can help, and the first one that they come across is Brynner's character. So he's an experienced cowboy, tough guy. They see him in action and they're convinced that he's someone that they could hire to help protect their town. Brynner then finds some additional help to go with him, and he starts recruiting people from town. Steve Mcqueen is the first, and he's basically just playing this Steve McQueen cool cowboy character. He's broke from gambling, but when he finds out what's going on with this village, he's willing to go and help. He knows, and they all know full well, that the village is poor and they don't have a lot of money. It's not going to be a lot of rewards, so they're just doing it just for the good of doing this. And the curious thing about watching this film is that there is this friendship that you see interplayed between Brynner and Steve McQueen. And it's a very big part of the film. You could say the film stars Brynner, but it really does sort of star Brynner with Steve McQueen. Two of them really work well together. They play off one another really well. But it's really interesting, from what I've read on the Internet Movie Database, is that apparently in the making of the film, the two did not get along very well. It's really strange because you really see that good chemistry between these two loyal friends. It's hard to believe that in real life there was an annoyance that they had with one another. And apparently, I guess later in life, when Steve McQueen was dying, Brynner came to visit to make peace with him, and the two of them did sort of resolve their difference then. So back to the film, the two of these characters eventually recruit more guys to come with them. We have an actor, Brad Dexter. He's this beefy guy who I honestly didn't recognize from anything else. His particular subplot seemed to be that he is suspicious that there may be some sort of a secret reward in return for doing this work. So he tags along, and as the film kind of goes along, he thinks maybe there's gold or silver hidden away in the hills near this Mexican village that they're protecting. Charles Bronson is also in the film, and he's excellent as usual. From his introduction, we see that he's this tough guy. He's outside chopping up firewood with an axe, and it doesn't take much to convince him to come along too to help protect this village. And his subplot was really an interesting one, is that he is perceived as like a hero to some of the kids of this village, and they're fascinated by him and his ability to fight, but he's pretty quick to rebuke them and to show them that this violent way of life is not the answer. James Coburn is in the film as well. He plays this cold as ice cowboy who is deadly with both a gun and a knife. His character I thought was the most fascinating, but unfortunately I don't think we've learned as much about his background in particular. Maybe that was part of the appeal, part of the mystique of his character, but we only see a little bit of his background. When he's introduced, he is shown basically in a duel to the death with another character. So the lesson here is don't get into a duel to the death with James Coburn, because he'll kill you pretty fast. I recently saw James Coburn actually in the movie Charade with Cary Grant. I did a review of that on this channel, and he was equally intimidating and menacing in that as well. Robert Vaughn is also one of the actors, one of the 7. He joins the band. He's kind of this well-dressed, dapper gunman who is wrestling with some demons, and we see that sort of unfold through the film. And his character, again, was fascinating. I really wanted to hear more of it. I wanted to see more of his background. And then finally there was the 7th member of the Magnificent Sevens, this young character, Horst Buchholz, who is an actor, honestly, I don't know beyond this film. A lot of these actors I did know, but he plays this impulsive young cowboy character who initially doesn't get the approval of the band of the other guys, but he eventually proves his worth, and they bring him along as well. So the 7 arrive at this village, and they get to work right away with both fortifying the village, they're building up the walls, the defense, and they're also training the men of the village to be prepared for future attacks from these bandits. And sure enough, the bandits do show up eventually, and there's their first initial showdown, and the Magnificent 7 and the armed men of the village really do their best to fight off this attack. And Eli Wallach and his crew were driven away, and several of their members are dead, and the film kind of progresses a little more. I'm not going to give too much more of the plot away here, but I'll just say that the 7 go off. They're going to raid Eli Wallach's camp, but they find it empty. But upon returning back to the villagers, they find that Eli Wallach and his crew, they've met with the villagers, and they have planned and are waiting to present an ultimatum to basically get this group of gunmen, the Magnificent 7, to get them out of town. I'll leave the plot there and kind of watch how everything resolves. I don't like to give too many spoilers. I'm just trying to give some basics of the story here. So it's definitely worth checking out. And as mentioned before, this was a remake of the 1954 classic by Akira Kurosawa, The Seven Samurai, which, again, is an excellent film worth checking out. That one's black and white. Magnificent 7 is Technicolor. It's just a minor difference. Many of the story ideas, the thread of what's being told here is very similar between the two films. In fact, you would really do yourself good to watch The Magnificent 7 after you first watch Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. So you can see these 7 samurai warriors. They're sort of told in a different style, and compare that to the American equivalent, which would be these 7 cowboys and gunslingers. And it's really kind of neat because you can kind of do a back and forth of, oh, I see, this guy is based on this guy, and so on, and vice versa. I will say this, there was the young, reckless character, the Horst Buchholz. He does a fine job as a Magnificent 7, but his equivalent character from Seven Samurai, played by Toshiro Mifune, was leagues better, I have to say. I enjoyed both actors, but as far as how Toshiro played this crazy lunatic drunk samurai who never quite fits in with the others, who stumbles into the bar, gets bashed on the head of a log and is rubbing his head, and just his crazy hijinks. I just thought that was so much more engaging. He's much more convincing when he's up ringing the bell to notify the villagers. I mean, when the other character, the Horst Buchholz, does it in the Magnificent 7, it doesn't quite have the same impact. One thing I would say that the Magnificent 7 had that makes it superior, and I have to hold my ground here, is I think the Magnificent 7 had the best music. And as a big fan of film music, particularly a fan of the loud, orchestral, bombastic John Williams soundtracks, hearing this music to this film by Elmer Bernstein, it is just right from the introduction, it just grabs your attention. It's a very memorable theme, and it's a leitmotif you hear repeated throughout the narrative of the film, and it is so good. It's one of the very memorable film scores. I think you'll hear versions of it that appear in popular culture. It's very memorable music. And Elmer Bernstein also went on to do the music for the 1984 Ghostbusters film as well. And his music, particularly the eerie theremin music you hear in the libraries, is just such good stuff. Magnificent Seven's soundtrack is one of those rare scores where it really bears listening to isolated from the film. You know, a lot of film music, especially today, is just plodding synthesizer noise, and it functions for the film. It just isn't that good to listen to isolated, and that's definitely not the case with Elmer Bernstein's music for this film. It is exceptional. Biggest gripe, though, I would have to say for the Magnificent Seven is I just don't think it was long enough. I would have loved to have seen more character development. This is just such a rich assortment of characters who are so complex. They're each unique individuals that seem like they have a story to tell, but we just, for the limitation of a 2-hour film, they just could not get as far into the character backgrounds as I would have liked. I think an expanded version of this film would have been amazing, but what we have is what we have, I guess. So those are my thoughts on The Magnificent Seven. I think it's a great film, and again, to repeat, check out The Seven Samurai first. Now, of course, being an old 1950s black and white Japanese film might be a little different than what you're used to watching. It's also going to be in subtitles. You may be able to find it dubbed in English. I prefer the subtitle version myself. But watching that, you can then make this comparison as you watch The Magnificent Seven. You'll see, I think, kind of like what I see, that there are pros and cons to both. I'm not going to say one is necessarily superior to the other. You can make that call yourself. But both are excellent films, and I'll be reviewing The Seven Samurai in a future broadcast. But those are my thoughts on Magnificent Seven. I hope you go check it out. It is streaming on Prime, and I think you can find it all over the place online. So, thank you.